Buongiorno, parlerò in inglese perché il mio italiano non è così efficiente, ma qualsiasi cosa credo che posso anche capire se c'è qualcuna domanda e intentare di parlare un po' italiano. E quindi. Ok, e quindi okay, my presentation is about the disruption of identity in the digital space. I would like to start with two examples. The first one is the well-known mask of Anonymous, a very popular symbol of social protest against surveillance, government secrets, political issues, and so on, that has gained a lot of space and participation mainly in digital social media. The other example is any of us, as common users, every time we are connected or online. So from Anonymous to a digital social media user, two examples that eventually seem different, but shares the same element, the mask. The mask is a textual space, and behind there is not an author. The mask is not hiding, but instead is activating a performance, and that type of performance is the act of writing. So the author is not the point of starting, but instead is the writing itself. In both cases, there is not an author, but what we have instead understand as a mask. That in this presentation, we're going to intend the mask as identity, an identity in a constant process of transformation. To understand this, Roland Barthes offers us a great tool through his theory of the death of the author, which rips out that figure, assuring that the author is no longer the arbiter of meaning within a text, but on the contrary, he suggests infinite possible meanings within the space of the text. So at the moment the figure of the author is not the source and the dictator of meaning, the text has not origin, it's just language. The text becomes a web, full of nodes and connections. And since you can only walk through that web, the reader or the spectator doesn't decipher anything, but on the contrary, the only possible act is to disentangle. And in that, sorry, I have a lot. Okay. So, since we cannot define it, the only thing that we can do is walk through it. So each text is composed by multiple writings brought into dialogue. Everything is coming from a previous theme. And with this premise, we also go into the destruction of the metaphysic of presence. And the metaphysic of presence is that statement that you have to always find a common origin or the exact identity of something. So to contextualize a bit the idea, this work of art from Alexis Mata, that is called Fake Faces, describes this quotation. The idea of deciphering a text forever becomes a chimera. That would mean to close the text, to imposing limits. With the death of the author, the reader is born. But what happens when the author of a text is himself the subject of that text? In a digital environment, during the meaning construction activity, we are represented as text due to the nature of this embodiment. So that space, the digital, which works more or less as this graphic, has no center and no origin, but instead is all connected and integrated into nodes and links. We have never been so available to many people, gaining control of both time and space. The user, as any of us, when we are online, is fed by other lectures, allowing him to new interpretations and new possibilities of offering sense through the act of writing, that, according to Barthes, replaces the author. Under this perspective, is in the activity of writing where a neutral space emerges, that space without voice or point of origin. and it is in that place in where all identity is lost. The meaning in the digital is perceived by other people not for our power, but for the pieces that we are showing. It's a game. In the digital, the identity is intended as a mask. Instead, the act of giving meaning is the work of the others, of the readers, whose active role is to pick up the multiplicity of interpretation, to track down a possible sense. So the only power the writer has is the power of mixing the writings, to compare them one to the other. And that is the power of intertextuality. With intertextuality, Julia Kristeva dissolved the notion of text as a unity. Again, the elements of origin and a signified fixed into a text are put into question as a mere illusion. And also the elements of individualism and authorship. Therefore, since a text is always in relation with other texts, the dynamics of meaning are always changing. The digital space, with his nodes all interconnected, are a clear example of how our virtual selves are formed by other virtual text. As Barthes said, all text is an intertext. So in that plurality of meaning, the virtual itself is never the same. Every time, as Heraclitus, when he looked to the river, both the river and him were different. It's a metaphor of the digital space that acts as the river and ourselves in a continuous state of flux. So there is not fixed signified. The enunciation happens here and now, simultaneously, never permanent or fixed, resulting in movement, so that is a performance. So in that continuous movement, the identity is a mask, changing all the time. As I said at the very beginning of the presentation, the mask is a textual space, and behind there is not an author. Oh. Okay, sorry. The mask is not a hiding, but instead is activating a performance. As in the example of Anonymous, who starts as a real person named Guy Fawkes, evolving into a cultural image in the graphic novel V for Vendetta, until the mask that we all recognize in different protests, to the completely disappearing of the face and the sense as a transient combination. Under Barthes' perspective, behind there is not an author. I would like to retake our first example, Anonymous' mask as an allegory of not identity. That is the same in us, a mask as any representation of us in the digital environment. But instead, what we have is an interconnection in where everything is linked to the other discourses by intertext and hypertext. The sense is an instant in that multiplicity of possible combination. As a way of synthesis, there is not identity in the digital simply because identity is transitory, a sense with a multiplicity of possible combinations, never permanent or fixed. The illusion of identity is in reality a mask. In any social network, our identity is a mask because it's always transforming. So, as a conclusion, it would be necessary to redefine the meaning of anonymity in digital social networks, for example, so as in web page, considering that the dynamics are provisional, in continuous transmutation, and so all sense of identity. Under the theories of the death of the author and intertextuality, the I is a mere illusion, since we are in an hypertext reality where everything is collaborative. As Daniel Chandler affirms, a kind of digital intertextuality that he defines as computer text intertextuality, which disrupts the conventional linearity of text, which can take the reader directly to the other text. So that's it.